I want to approach this debate speaking to somebody from the Christian faith, and I've tended to avoid in the last 5 years talking too much about faith in the chamber, partly because I don't want to be like pigeonholed as some sort of like mad Ned Flanders. But in all honesty, one of the first things that when I spoke in this house, I quoted from the book of Micah, chapter 6, verse 8, when we as Christians are commanded to act justly, walk humbly, and love mercy. And the pledge that I made 5 years ago is that when considering issues in this place, I would try and approach everything that I do in here and apply those principles to that. And I must confess, I have hummed and hawed, as we would say, about taking part in this debate because what people have seen as being the trans debate has become incredibly toxic. And I think for me, some of the most marginalised, most vulnerable people on the face of this planet have sadly been used as a political football. And we've seen elements of that today. So I want to try and bring to this debate a bit of a focus on faith and how I approach this subject. Because, as many people have already outlined, it is actually the vast majority of conversion therapy takes place in religious settlements. And for that, I am deeply sorry and incredibly embarrassed. I think it is absolutely appalling and would condemn it in every form. Subscribes to a view of compassion. It does not subscribe to this idea of using this very vulnerable group of people as some sort of wedge issue, as some sort of political football, as is so often the case. And I do rather think that the government, in choosing to remove trans people from the ban on conversion therapy, are doing exactly that. This is being used as a wedge issue, and I think most of us in this room would know that. Anybody who tries to approach these debates, all of a sudden it gets boiled down to who can use toilets, what kind of genitalia people have got. I think that does a massive disservice to the debate. It gets away from the fact that trans people are subject to some of the worst mental health issues, some people who are contemplating suicide, and the idea that it gets boiled down in some pathetic radio phone-in asking people whether someone can have a penis, I think is deeply distasteful. And reflecting on, going back to that Christian theme, when we look in the Bible and we talk about the Good Samaritan didn't stop and ask someone what their pronouns were, didn't ask whether they were male, female, non-binary. They stood there to try and help people. And so for so many Christians, I would just ask them that as they approach this debate to do so with compassion, because far, far too often the church, in my view, has become absolutely obsessed about people's sexual orientation, people's gender, and they have done so at the expense of social justice and equality. We are commanded in the Bible to talk about faith, hope and love, but it says in the Bible that the greatest of these is love. I do not believe as a Christian that we can talk about practising love to other people whilst pursuing a ban on conversion therapy that is exclusive of trans people. So I very much support that ban on conversion therapy, but it must go further. It must include trans people, and we must try and have a much more grown-up debate that focuses on compassion and not the nonsense that we see far too often.
Thank you.